Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today. I am talking with my friend Julia Gallagher, who is a hilarious and talented actress that I have had the pleasure of working with on a short film that I did. But she has booked recurring roles and co stars, guest stars on network television as well as national commercials. Really doing great stuff. She says in the episode today that she's still would be considered developmental talent, but she's really getting a lot of uh, nice credits under her belt. That I will just briefly mention that due to the SAG strike happening right now, or at the time of this filming, um, we don't mention any specific shows or networks or studios. So things can get a little vague. I would encourage you all to go and check out Julia's website as well as her IMDb. Again, phenomenal actress, and this conversation has so much goodness, everything from the audition process and self-tapes and working with your agents and how to get an agent, as well as being on set, everything from being booked or bumped rather from a co-star to a recurring, and even some on-set shenanigans with a llama. So there's lots of fun in this conversation, and I really hope you enjoy my talk with Julia. Oh my goodness. Well, hello, Julia Gallagher. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hello, Kaitlin. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this and to talk to you.
I'm so excited to talk to you. And I want to start in maybe a very strange place because I was looking at your reel, and there
Hmm.
is an amazing clip of you riding a llama. And
Yes.
as someone who grew up with llamas,
Oh my God.
but I never rode them, I have to ask, what was that experience like on set? What was that? How did that go working with an animal actor? It just looked so fun.
Yes, I would love to know what your upbringing was like with llamas. Because I don't know if you know, but I was told that no one's supposed to ride a llama, right? Like they just don't have the
Right.
backbone or like the body for it. And for that part, and I know we talked about this, but like I won't say the name of the show or anything because we're in the strike. So I'll
Yes. So
forego
currently being recorded during the writers and SAG actors strikes. So we're not going to be mentioning like specific shows or studios. But I feel like we could talk about the parts. So yes,
yes, yes, yes,
all
yes.
of that to preface for people who are like listening, like what are they talking about?
Yeah,
It's a
why?
show and a llama was involved. Okay, that's all you need to know.
Yes. Um, and for the audition, they were looking for somebody below a certain weight, and
Mm,
like that is because llamas can't hold a lot of
sure,
weight.
sure.
And so that whole process was really fun. I like got to go to a farm like deep in the valley to like meet the llama for a day and like
That is
practice
so
on it
cute.
and like riding it. It was actually really fun. Like I was there for only like an hour and then they're like, okay, you can go. I'm like, are you sure? Like I could stay longer if you want. And then during the actual filming, they I basically learned how to it's like riding a horse. Like you mount the llama, you like
Mm,
mount off, things like that. I could only really sit on it for like when it moved, which was like one small section.
mhm.
And the rest of the time they put me in a harness and they suspended me in the air above the llama.
So not
And
all of your weight is on the llama.
yes, for the rest of, because I'm on the llama for a couple minutes of the scene. And so to save the llama, they had to hoist me into the air and just like lightly put me just above the llama. So it looked like I was sitting on it. And if you like look closely at the scene, you can kind of see there's like something underneath my shirt. I'm wearing like a tight shirt. There's like
Yeah,
kind of something underneath my shirt. I'm kind of sitting weird because my legs can't go like they're like jutted out and I can't like move them any closer because I'm literally like in a harness saddle.
that's
And
amazing.
it was hilarious, but the llama would keep moving. So like I'd be like suspended in the air and like during a take the llama would just like move and I would like still be like
Just
in the
there.
actual air. And we actually had to do reshoots one day because they're like, none of the footage is like usable. But it was really fun, but just like a ridiculous like I had a stunt double, like
Oh, wow.
because they had to use like a harness. It was silly, like all for the bit, all for a bit of using a llama. But yeah, it was fun and the magic of TV, I guess.
I love that. Like, I saw that on your reel and I was like, I have to ask her immediately because that's just so random. But I feel like
Right.
that's one of the fun things about being an actor is you get to have all these different experiences and it's like your job, it's like your career that you can go live all these different lives and have encounters with llamas. Like,
Yes, my friends like wouldn't stop basically talking about or like that like one of my friends made a gif like of me like on a llama like because people were like this is so random. I'm like I agree like and I loved it because it was for like a kids show and
hmm
like I grew up watching that network when I was younger so like I was like this is ridiculous but like also awesome like my inner like 8-year-old is like screaming with joy right now.
I love it so much. Well, speaking
Yeah.
of, so you said it was like a kids show. I did
Mhm.
notice and loved that your reel is showing because I've seen you act. So Julia was in my most recent short film, Rough Draft. Amazingly hilarious job. Um, and
Amazingly hilarious short, by the
wow,
way.
thank
And
you, thank
won
you.
won at like the film festival that it
I know.
was.
I'm so excited. I finally got it like up with a press kit and stuff and submitting it to film festivals, so we'll see what's happening there. So, fingers
Yes,
crossed,
so
but
good.
so I've seen your acting was what I was getting at, and I know that I'm trying to get a question out here because I've heard people say that when you get an audition, you do need to look at like what show it's for and what
Mhm,
studio, what network it's for because that's going to tell you more about like the tone or
mhm.
how you kind of might want to approach that genre. So I was curious, you said you did this kids show and it has like a different energy and voice than like some of the other performances I've seen you give. And I'm wondering how much you do take that all into account when you're prepping for an audition.
Yeah, that's like a great question and obviously different for everybody, everyone's
Sure.
process and things like that. I think for that specifically, I don't know what it was. I read the script and I was like, this is such a ridiculous character in a ridiculous circumstance on like a very like on a multicam children's program. And
Right.
so I looked at that and I was like I for some reason naturally I was like I think this would person would talk with like a higher voice because they're just like a little bit out there and like a little charactery. And I remember even when I was on set, like I was on break and like having lunch and one of the writers like was talking to me and I talked like was like answering a question of his and he's like oh like that's not your real voice like and I was like oh yeah I guess like it is like a little bit like put on.
Yeah.
I definitely don't do that for like everything. I think it's fun to find a character's voice and a character's physicality. And I
Mm,
think for me, it was really fun to do for that role in particular because of the circumstances and the show and the tone and everything else. And that's like, part of the fun of the job, I guess,
yeah.
too. Now, do I do that for like every role? Do I sit down like, what is this character's voice? Like, probably not all the time for every audition, just because, if you're going in for like a medical or like a procedural
That's
or
what I've
something.
heard is like you have
Yeah.
to know if it's like the criminal procedural versus the like, so the
Right.
pacing of the show and everything.
Yeah. And even like I'm like just working on like scenes right now, like for class and things. And I'm working on what is it? I think it's working on a couple different ones, so I'm like getting confused. But a medical uh show. And when you first read it, you think one thing. I'm like, I've never actually, like all these types of shows can be the same, but I watched clips of this one in particular, and I'm like, oh, okay, so like this tone is the similar to other medical ones, but it is a little different than like other ones that you would watch? I guess I'm trying to be careful not to like say like certain show names just
I
in
know,
the
I
same.
know. No, I
But
appreciate it.
I always for any audition for anything, I'll always watch at least like an episode or two or three of the show before I actually start working on it. And if I can't watch the show, I'll find clips online
Yeah.
and watch like as many clips as I can just to get like a feel for everything.
So when you're doing that, I guess I kind of want to ask about your audition process and how much time is going into each of these. And I assume they're self tapes. That's another question. And like how much time is going into each one? Because I think a lot of people right now are struggling with the fact that it feels like a whole production when you haven't even
Mhm.
booked the role yet. And it's like a lot of people have, the day job thing and it's like finding the time. But obviously, you want to give your best to your craft. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on really how much time and energy are you putting into each one to make it feel like it's the best that you can do, and maybe it depends on role size or something, but just about your
Yeah,
audition process.
yeah. It varies for sure because sometimes something will come in and you have 24 hours. And in that 24 hours, like you're saying, with these self tapes now, there's so many pros and cons to it. Pro is that you're in your own space, you can run it, see what it's going to look like on camera, run it a couple times on camera to practice, then tape it. You don't have to sit in traffic for like an hour or two or three, getting to and from someplace. You're in your own
Finding
space,
parking.
finding parking, like just like asking why do I do this um and but the con is that like here it's just like you and your reader on Zoom, and I think about the amount of time it takes for hair, for makeup, to set up, to then like work on the audition, like beforehand. It's kind of, it can be all over the place, sort of. But usually when an audition comes in, kind of like what I said, if I know the project or the show,
Yeah.
I usually won't, and I know it well, I usually won't watch like, too much of it because I like know the tone, I know the style, I know what they're going for. If I don't know that, again, I'll try to watch like a couple episodes or as many clips as I can online. If I can't find anything that that writer, producer, or director has done, or perhaps it's a film, then I'll go online, look up the writers, look up the producers, look up the director, see what they've done in the past, see if there are any deadline articles talking about the project, who's already been cast, the vision that the either the director has, or like a quick bio of it that like maybe the breakdown didn't have. I'll really try to gather as much information as I can that will help me place that character in whatever world that they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to create. And then from there, I guess also working on the scenes, I'll say that like there's some content that I guess any actor, like, you read it and you're like, I get this. Like,
Yeah.
I think I know this character. I think I know what they're trying to do. I something just clicks. And there are sometimes when I read something, I'm like, I have no idea what they want. I have no idea what they're trying to do. I can bring myself to it, or a little bit of like something that I think will work and like make the choices and etc. But I always try to at least spend, you know, and this is just like a random rule, but like maybe an hour on a page. And like that'll definitely vary. Like if it's one page, like an hour, great. If it's like 10 pages, I don't have time to do like
Right.
10 hours, most likely with a job, with everything else, with like a 24-hour turnaround. And a lot of the time, for depending on the size of the project, I'll like coach. I have a couple different coaches that I love, and I'll definitely reach out to them just to make sure that, I just want to be on the best, on my best game for a
Yeah,
lot of
well,
these.
when do you feel like it's worth it to invest before you've made money as the actor, but you're investing in coaching for the audition?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it definitely varies with, um, it definitely varies per project, per season of my life. Like, for instance, I don't have a job right now. So,
Fun
and
employed.
woo! So I have been lucky to get a couple opportunities during this strike, auditions for soap operas, because
Mm.
they are technically not the same contract that we
Oh.
are striking. So they operate under a different contract entirely, just like commercial contracts, things like that. And so and I have luckily auditioned for this office a couple times over the last year. So they know my work,
Hmm.
thankfully. Did I choose to spend money to coach on that last audition? No, because again, I have no income coming in. If I did have a job that would make me very lucky and privileged to be able to spend the money to do that. But I do find I definitely will invest for projects, for network projects, for films, especially for like casting directors I've never been in front of,
Mm.
that I really want to make a good impression
Right.
in front of. It definitely, yeah, I think it definitely varies based on project for me. And like, if I don't want to spend the money, like, I've definitely gone to friends and been like, can we run this? Can you help me? Can you just like,
Mm.
I would love, go to trusted friends uh, who I love their work, and like, we can do that with each other. So it definitely varies. It varies for me. If I have the like extra income to spend on it, yes.
Hmm.
And depending on like the project and the
Are
role.
you typically memorized for self tape?
Now, yes. Yeah. I think for before COVID, I would be pretty memorized too going in the room. And I feel like everyone has their own
Hmm.
opinion on like, should you be memorized, should you not be memorized. And I think before COVID, before self tapes, everyone has a different opinion, but I was on the school of thought where like I'll always bring my sides in, I'll
Right.
hold them, but like I'll never look at them, you know what I mean?
Right.
If I need them, then like they're there. But in self tapes, yeah, I feel like
Okay.
it's yeah, at this point I feel like it's almost distracting to have to look down. But if you have to, like, I think that's also totally fine, especially if you have like a 2-page monologue.
Oh
And I've
gosh.
heard
I've
so
heard
many
people
people,
use like teleprompter apps.
yeah, yeah. And somebody put it, I was in a class a couple months ago, and somebody put it pretty well. They're like, they can pay me to memorize like this 1-page monologue. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about that, but
Hmm.
like, that's a good point. And like in a
Yeah.
24-hour turnaround, you have like 7 pages, and like one whole page is like your dialogue. Like, yeah, yeah,
Well, speaking of memorized,
yeah.
excuse me, everybody. I'm with a cough drop right now. So, anyways, um, um, but do you feel like, are you trying to get, what is more important to you? Kind of
Hmm.
like the emotion and intention of the scene and getting that across, or as close to word perfect as possible?
Yeah, I feel like I struggle with this because again, everyone has so many different
Right.
opinions on this. Personally, I think the emotion and the the character and bringing that to life is much more important than being word perfect. But there are some casting directors that really fixate on being word perfect.
And some writers.
And so, yes, yes. And you want to respect the writing. You want to respect the writers. Like, that is what you are there to do. Um, and I've heard it all the time. I try to be really as close to word perfect as possible. And sometimes it really gets in my way.
Hmm.
Sometimes my coach or anyone will be like, okay, just like don't, if you get the words like these 2 words wrong, like it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's hard. You want to like bring your best while respecting the writing at the
Yeah.
same time.
I try to remember like it can be one thing for the audition and then of course like word perfect more for the role, but I do the same thing where it's like you get really in your head because of course you want to respect the writer, but then it's like if it's not coming because you haven't had, more than 24-hour prep time or whatever it is, it's
Yeah.
like but
Yes. Yes. It's like it's trying to juggle the like eight different balls you have in the air when just
mhm,
like doing a scene.
right, right. Well,
Yeah.
let me ask you, had a recent recurring role on a network program. It was very exciting, and I'd love to hear kind of. Let's start with the audition since we're talking about auditions. Was that process different, or like how many different callbacks and rounds were there for that role?
Honestly, it was very simple. So I'll start with the fact that it started as a co-star.
Hmm.
So the initial audition, and usually for co-stars, they're just booking off the tape. So for my initial audition, I did it, sent it in, and then got it, which was great. And I will say I've been into that office numerous times for numerous different shows that they cast. So, and none of those roles had ever been perfect. I don't want to say perfect, but like really great for me. Like I
Hmm.
definitely could have
Hmm.
like seen it for sure. And I'm so grateful that they had called me in for like so many different roles in the past, which is wonderful. But I think I saw this, and again, it's like talking about that like click. You read it, I'm like, oh, this could be me, like
Yeah.
for sure. Um, so sent it in, and like that was it. And when we were not to get like ahead or anything, but when we were on set, one of the the top of show series regular, he was like, well, I guess like, we'll be seeing more of you in the future. And
Mm.
I was like, what does that mean? He's like, I've seen how this show goes before. Like, they're going to bring you guys back. It was like me and two
Oh.
others who were cast as like a new, basically like new coworkers to like
Hmm.
the lead of the show. And and luckily they did. They like called a month or two later, and then I had like way more lines. And
That's
that
so
was kind of like
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
which was a little scary just because I'm like, oh, like that's great, like wonderful. But also I'm like, oh, like that's a different it's my first recurring, and it's a different experience to like have to audition for a role and then they say like, yeah, that's it, that's what we want, okay. Whereas this, it's like, oh, like they just like give you lines, and like I guess I just literally I mean just like that's the whole point of like being organic, go up and do it, but like no feedback until you're like literally in it, like
That's
on.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, take us to like on set. So let's just start. Like you get there, did you have like a trailer or you go to makeup? Like what was that day like? Or both
Yeah.
multiple days?
Yeah. Yeah. So usually started with me going to my trailer, which is always just like a very exciting thing.
You're
And
like,
I
"Hey,
don't
my name is on this little door
yeah.
here." Hmm.
And I've done like other shows and like worked before, and I've had my own separate room or dressing room, but this was actually the first like trailer I had like owned separate from like anyone else, which was like lovely. As opposed to like a dressing room at a studio type of thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, and then going into makeup, everyone was so nice. I met like some of the other uh, people on the show, and it's kind of funny because I feel like in LA and Hollywood really is like small, because I met someone who was like, I know you know this person. And it
Oh.
was like, oh, like that's crazy. Let's like, talk and be friends, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was great. And like both of the directors that I had worked with on that show were just like lovely, really great. One was somebody who I had watched on TV before, like in uh, on a show that I really loved, and so that was like really lovely. Um, but yeah, it was pretty great. I mean, a lot of it, so much of it is like waiting around for like
Right.
hours and hours. And I feel like that's something that you forget sometimes between stints when you're like, oh, like, I'm waiting for like 5 hours before I go in,
Hmm.
and then working for a couple hours, then probably coming back and changing and then like going again. And so, like, it can be a lot of waiting, especially if you're not like the top of show, like a top
Yeah.
show performer. Um, but it
But was
was,
there like, s- sorry, I've done stand-in work on this show and I
Mhm.
was so like TV was so fast and
Mm,
the main cast came in, did the scene and we were supposed to watch and then do stand-in while, like they got all the lights and cameras set up and then they would come
yeah.
back and actually record. Um so I'm curious if that was kind of the experience there and then what is it like working with a director of TV or you guys just kind of like did it or was there like blocking and rehearsal like what was that kind of process like?
Yeah, I feel like I would love to talk to you about like your stand-up work because I find it so, I feel like you guys, are on set for so much of the time. And then when the cast comes in, it's like, you rehearse, director is like telling you, like giving you blocking, um, giving moments maybe, but like sometimes it's also like, all right, here's your blocking, let's rehearse, great. And then we go out and then everyone sets up and we come in and like we do it, and sometimes they're like, okay, great, moving on, and you're like, did I even do
Yeah.
anything? And sometimes they would, I've worked with like multiple different directors in this type of setting, and I love, and I don't know if you can relate, but like I come from a theater background, so like
Mm.
one of the things that I love about theater is like the collaborative effort, and working with a director one on one and the other actors. And like you said, in TV it's so fast, and like sometimes the director will be like, okay, can you just like hit this word a little bit more, and that's like it. Or they'll be like, oh, like that was really funny, great job, and then like, okay, we're done, like
Yeah, that's what I feel
because
like.
they have other things to worry about.
Exactly. And because there's so much going on. And like you said, there's so much waiting around from the acting side because there's all these other moving parts. And I think the part that really just like opened my eyes that working actors, it's so, especially in TV, it's so fast, it's so technical. It's like hit your stuff and go. Like we're moving on, we're moving on. And
Yeah, yeah,
also just like almost the responsibility on the actor and the permission for the actor to really like you've been hired, make your decisions and go. Like the
yeah,
director kind of doesn't have as much of a forefront as maybe in film is kind of what I've picked up on. I don't know if you would agree with that, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's funny because I feel like, any actor who gets to work in that sort of capacity on set, especially for TV, and that's always been something that I've wanted to do. And I'm not a series regular yet, so like I'm still developmental talent.
Yet
Yet,
everybody.
okay, universe. um, but so I'm like still developmental talent. Like I'm not like, working every day 50 weeks out of the year, or not even 50. My God, like 12, whatever. Um, so, you work like you do like, audition after audition, like you work so hard to get to that one day or 5 days you have on set or whatever. And so when it goes by so quickly, you're like, did that even happen?
Right,
Like,
right.
great, here for a couple hours, here for a couple days, and then it's like, woo, like you did it. It's like, wow, that is fast, and that's the pace, and that's the excitement, and that's the adrenaline. But it is, yeah, definitely a different pace to other types of
How do you
things.
deal with the fall off of that? Because I feel like anytime my roommate and I talk, and anytime we book something,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, our dreams are coming true. And then you get there and you like filmed and you're like, that was it. Okay, bye.
Yeah. And that was it.
You're like, do I even
Congratulations.
want to be an actor? Like, what's happening? I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be super excited and celebrating right now, and it just feels
Yeah.
like wah wah.
I feel like so many people can relate to that. Any actor can relate to
Right.
that. After any success or any win, that is exactly how I feel as well, where I'm just like, I am on cloud nine, and there's this little teeny tiny voice in the back of my head, anyone's head, that's just like, but when is the next one coming? You know,
Right.
you better like soak this up because you just never know.
Yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah.
feel like I've been out here for 10 years. And I think at first, like those wins felt so, so, so high.
Yeah.
And then the lows after, when you're like, I booked like a national commercial. I booked like my first TV show. I booked like, a film that's going to a festival. And like, there seems to be crickets. Like, what's happening? Is it me? Was it my work? Like, because I'm doing like X, Y, and Z. Like, I'm in class, I'm submitting myself, I'm auditioning, I'm talking to agents, I'm, networking, like things like that. You could be doing all the things and they are probably working in your favor. And yet, it's like, oh, that's weird. I'm not booking 10 million things right after I had this thing. And I feel like at first that was really tough to deal with. It was like the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And I think personally, and everyone again is different. Personally, it's taken me years to like remind myself that that will happen. It's not like there will be seasons where like there are a lot of things happening, which is great. And there'll be seasons where not a lot of things are
Yeah.
happening. And that's also okay. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's taken me years to like really embrace. Because,
Yeah.
like, if you want to do this for the rest of your life, it's going to be the rest of your life of this, the ups and the downs.
Yeah. Well, and I even try to tell people like even your favorite A-list actors are
Yeah.
not working 365 days a year. You know?
No.
It's very in seasons like you said because you'll see the same actor has 3 movies come out back to back and then you're like, "Where'd they go?" Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. What are you doing? And I think about that even for like shows that have been on the air for like years and years and like are like have ended and are still like on TV. And then you're like, what happened to that one actor on this hit show? Like, I haven't seen them working. Like, I still do that with like films right now where I'm just like, this
Yeah.
actor was like really good and like in a big role in this film and like they haven't done anything. Like, it's just one of those things. And of course, any of these actors could have been like, you know what? I did it. And I figured out I want to do something else.
Right,
Or
right.
like, I don't want to do this anymore. But
Sure.
it's like that. Like there's no one who is at the top or constantly working for forever.
Yeah, and it's a reminder when you're in class. I've been in class with, someone will get a series regular role and
Yeah.
then the season is over and they're done and it's like, "Oh, you're starting not necessarily starting from the bottom again, but it's like, yeah, you have to get your next gig." So
Yeah.
it's like a never ending thing. So what do you do like maybe in the day to day or you talked about seasons, but how do you stay kind of in that positive mindset or keep feeling creative and not just totally defeatist spiraling happening?
Yeah, because that spiraling happens enough.
Oh,
But
I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, right? What spiraling, existential crisis? What are those things? That's a great question, Caitlin. And I'm gonna try to answer that as best as I can. I think a big thing for me, especially in the last couple years through COVID and everything, has been to surround myself with a lot of positive people. I consider myself a very positive person, but I definitely, if there's a lot of like negativity around me, like I can take a lot of that energy in.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to not get so bogged down into like, when is it going to happen? Why isn't it happening? And also, like, to try and have as full of a life as I can outside of acting. I think
Yeah.
that is so imperative for any one in the arts to have other things that like really make you happy.
Yeah.
And I have found that with like friends, with my partner, with activities, with things that like really fill me up and like enrich me, that those have been, and luckily I found like a lot of those things during COVID, especially things like creating a routine of
Mm.
things that I do every day that do bring me joy, which has been like so helpful. Because like things like you can get, I've gotten luckily very close to a lot of things over the last year or two, and a lot like all of them have not worked out, and those are also like wins. Like I've had to
Yeah.
learn how to celebrate really small wins, and I'm sure that's something that like obviously you can relate to as well, like just to be able to let yourself to celebrate even the smallest of victories, like getting a call back, like
Yeah.
that's something to be really proud of. Getting an avail check, great. Being like one of two people and like not being that person, like great, that's like you
Or
didn't get
even
it,
like
but
you're
like
saying, like you've been called in by the same offices, like they're getting
yes,
to know your work. And then when the right fit, like you said, finally comes along, they're like, I know who's perfect for that. Julia, bring her in.
yes, yes, exactly. And like that's also a huge win. And even just like still being in it, when you want
Yeah.
to still be in it, like you're doing it. It's all part of a process that I'm still trying to really uh be good about to myself
Yeah.
daily.
Yeah. We have to be nice to ourselves.
Yeah, I think there was, I don't know if you've ever read it, the oh my gosh, this is where my brain is going to like is clunks out sometimes with people's names, but um uh
It's all good.
Jenna.
Yes. Jenna Fisher's book.
Yes, yes.
Love
And
that book.
I've never read the book. I've been wanting to, but she wrote this, I don't want to say like an essay, a piece
Mm.
about, and I'm guessing she probably put it in her book or something, about how, she would go home for holidays. And, how do you describe the win of getting a callback or like getting to be one of the last people like to be seen for a role,
Yeah.
or I think she like specifically mentioned like a callback for a role that like was not right for her, but like she really put her all into it and like still got pretty far in the casting process. How do you like describe that to like family who are just like, okay, but like you all
What are you
like
doing?
that,
What have I seen you in? What do you do
yeah,
day to day?
what are
You're
you
in.
doing? Yeah. And then even and she didn't mention this, but like I've had friends, and like this has happened too, where, like people outside the industry or family been like, oh, you worked on something cool. And then like that's that. And it's like, I have worked so hard to get to just this one place. And
Yeah.
so like, how do you describe something that like people are like neat or like, oh, but like, what are you doing? Like, there's so again, the highs and lows of like these
Yeah.
small and big things that make up so much of it.
Yeah. 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 Um, well, I also know I want to kind of segue into I know that you've, like myself, have written and produced your own short film now, and I don't know how many of those you've done, but I'm curious what what that's felt like for you, because for me it's given me this whole like, okay, I'm not just an actor, or like I have more control and I can like write parts for myself that I really want to see, or I don't have to wait for someone else's permission. So I'm curious your experience with making your own shorts and stuff.
Yeah, I've like wrote and produced with friends in the past on different projects. Um, which was great because a lot of people I've worked with are like good friends of mine
Mm.
who are so talented and incredibly funny and incredibly smart with how they produce and write. Um, and that was really great just because, it can be very intimidating if you've never,
Yeah.
you know, done all the things, like written, produced, whatever.
Right.
Especially technically. Like again, I have a theater background. I went to theater school. I've directed theater, and now that I've been doing TV and film for like the last decade, I feel like I know that, you know, but have I ever gone out and like done that on my own? Like, yeah, it can be very scary. So this past spring, I did write and direct and produce and start in like my own short. And boy, was it a learning experience. I'm sure you can
Tell
relate to
us about it.
this. I felt like at this point, I was like, you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect or even good. I'm not saying it was bad, but like, is it the best thing I'll ever make? No. And that is totally fine. I think I've always been so scared to like put myself out there and make something because I always had this mindset of if it's not going to be amazing, like, why would I even try? And that
Right.
is so ridiculous in anything
Right.
creative. Like, and if somebody told me that and they were an actor, I'd be like, you're like, just that's not that what?
Yeah.
Like, you will most likely suck, like when you
You're
start
yeah.
anything or not. Maybe you're like naturally gifted and like that's also incredible. But you're not going to be your best when you first start.
Sure.
So that was something that always held me back. And in April or May, I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Sorry, I don't know if
Do
I
it.
can just darn it, I'm gonna do it. And I wrote something, and that was a whole process when I wrote something on my own. Like I've written little like sketches and things like that before in the past, but like doing a full-fledged like short film, that process, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I would sit down and sometimes be like, this is the best thing that
Oh
I've
yeah.
ever written that anyone will ever like see and hear. And then like 15 minutes
I
later or
hate
the
you.
next day
Yeah.
I'll be like, this is the worst possible thing I have ever, like, no one is going, this is so bad. And so I was like, wow, I have so much respect for writers who can just like sit down and like bust out a couple drafts of something and like have their work written. Like I was so encompassed by like just trying to like write something that'll work and be funny and like entertaining, like
Mhm.
whatever. So it made me have a lot of respect for writers. And then even doing the whole, um, producing part of it, I think I definitely was selling myself a little short with it. I'm not trying to say I'm like the most competent person ever when it comes to this stuff, but I've been doing it long enough and I am a able-bodied, yes, smart person. Like
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, I if anyone's going to be able to do it, I got to like trust in myself to be able to
Right.
figure it out with finding crew, with finding a location, with, props, things like that. And directing wise was very interesting because again, I've had experience with directing theater in the past, which I love. But in terms of directing something for camera, it is so different, so technical, and it made me have so
And you
much
were
respect.
in it, right?
Yeah, and so that
I've
that
done
was
that
also
the same
like
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's literally what you did for your last short film. Like it's
Yeah.
so next time I will probably choose one or the other just so I can
Right.
focus on that. But it's so fascinating and it does make me respect. I already have an immense amount of respect for directors or anyone behind the camera and just having to go and be like, did we get it technically? Great. Oh, the performances, yeah, they were good. Like, we don't need to tweak. Like, it made me understand why things have to go so quickly because you
Mhm.
only have a certain amount of time and you have to get everything, the shot, the performance. Like, it was
Yeah.
just such a learning experience. And like, will I do it again? Yes. And I'm so glad that it was such a learning experience because otherwise, I don't know. I just like, you need to start somewhere. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
definitely
yeah.
started somewhere.
I started somewhere. No, when I made my first short, I was like, I don't
Yeah.
care how this turns out. Maybe I can get like some real footage for me and my friend. It
Yeah.
wasn't like I'm doing everything with this. And then it ended up getting into some festivals, and we both won like best comedic actors awards for it. And like, not that that's like the what I'm trying to get at, but just you might surprise yourself when you sit down to actually do it. And I'm such a like intellectualizer, like overthinker,
Mhm.
that I have to remind myself, and then I want to scream it from the rooftops at everybody, that like you learn by doing. And I know it's so scary, but I have so many friends who are like, "Oh, I have this script idea." And I'm like, "Write it. Write it."
Yes.
And I'm yelling
Yes,
at myself too, because I have so many script ideas that also are
absolutely.
like in various stages, but it's like,
Yes.
yeah, you just gotta move through it. You gotta do it. And it might be ugly and it might suck, but then you go to the next one, you take what you've learned. And
Yeah. Can I ask too, how many have you done before your last one? Because I felt like when I showed up on set for you and I saw the final product, I was like, this is somebody who's been doing this for like a while, like so professional. It
that is
turned
so
out
kind.
so well and like so great to work with. So can I ask you, yeah, how many did you end up doing before that?
Thank you. I have literally only ever made films from these short film challenges where
Yeah.
you have like an external deadline, you have to get it done. And like, I've only done ones that was like a week or 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And so before that, I've done three. I think that was my fourth film. And
Wow.
um, one of them was during COVID using stuffed animals in my voice.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it was great. That sounds great,
it is
honestly.
hilarious. Everyone should check it out. No, I'm kidding, but
Plug it, plug
yeah, plug it, plug it. Um,
it.
but what was so funny about the film that I just did with you is I was laughing with my roommate who was also in the film and was in my first film, um, because it was so similar. Like I could see my things laid out. Like I had the
Mm,
same structure where we started with like slow-mo music. I had the same jokes or like friends talking over wine. I had the same, like you could
mhm.
see my voice starting to take shape. And I thought that was so interesting because it's not something that I like planned for, but I had to, and I've only done four, but to get through those iterations and be like, oh, I'm starting to see a through line. I'm starting to see who I am as a filmmaker. And that's so interesting.
Which must be so exciting because then it's like, oh, like starting to have like a voice that takes shape and things like that. Because you see that with so many filmmakers where it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, yeah, here's that scene where like someone's going to break down and it's like right on time. Like, you know what I mean?
Right, right,
Like, or
right, right,
like
right.
the tone and things like that. That's so exciting. I think just to, yeah, be like, oh, like this is how I'm seeing myself, or like this is what's coming out of like the stuff that I'm making.
It's also so interesting. I mean, it's also really vulnerable too. Like we talk about how vulnerable acting is, and you're sharing yourself and your emotions and your reactions, but writing and filmmaking has been super vulnerable for me because I'm like, "Oh wow, everyone can see what I'm thinking about right now." Like
Yeah.
these have kind of almost been like little scrapbooks of what was going through my mind at these times in my life, and then you like
Mhm.
solidify. I feel like Taylor Swift writing a song, like it's like this is what
Yeah.
was happening with Kaitlin
Yeah.
in 2019.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's also like so great too to be able to look back on your past work and be like, oh yeah, that was like in my timeline, like
Yeah.
what I was
But
doing
that's
and
why like
thinking.
I've started even watching other filmmakers now and being like, "Oh, I can see what's going through them right now." Like cuz it
Mhm.
takes so much time and effort to get a film made that
Yeah.
that person is living with that project for years. And it's like,
Mm.
"Okay, this is a little slice of them." And so yeah, what you're talking about, getting the respect for people, or and also the creative process where I've seen charts. I'll have to find a chart to show you, but it was like, this is awesome. This is the worst thing anyone's ever done. This
Yeah.
is so great. Like I do that when I'm editing. I'm like, God, this is awful. No one can see this. And like, yay,
Yeah.
I got it. It's funny. Like,
Right, right. And then like but the outcome and then is so, you know, such a wonderful feeling to be like,
yeah,
I that was hell for a lot of it, but like I have something to show for it now.
right.
And it's good. Like that's and I can see that like with your work, especially this last film, that I was like, oh, like this seemed like it was so and all like good projects and good art is like that seemed like it was like easy to do. Like, wow, script was so good, working was so good, shooting was so good, like end product so good, like that must have been easy. But of course, it never is.
Right. And I like to share that with people, and I'm glad we're talking about it because I want people to know when they're going through these creative journeys, no matter what your medium is, you're gonna feel bad about it and like you
Yeah.
suck and like you should stop. And Julia and I are both saying, keep going because you got to
Yeah.
get over the hill,
Yes.
and it'll
Yes.
happen each time. And like, that's normal.
And I think that's such a sneaky part of like that of any creative process. You're always going to be like, should I have even done this? Was this idea
Am I
sucks? Like,
even a creative person? Like, what am
yeah.
I doing?
Like, why did I do this? Why? And literally, I think I like mentioned it before, but like I've had those moments where like I'll drive, obviously, before COVID, and like to a theatrical audition and like in a big like Hollywood part of town, and like like things like near Avenue of the Stars, and like I'm like in my car like sitting next to like CAA, or like about to go in a building. I'm like so nervous. I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm so bad. Like all that negative talk like
Yes.
goes through your head, where it's just like, oh my gosh, this is part of it. This is literally part of it. And you just have to embrace that part to get to the other
Yeah.
end of it.
Well,
And
I'd
yeah.
I'd love to ask you more about mindset then, and about, like I have a lot of negative self-talk. Um
Mhm.
I personally have had trouble kind of getting to the next level where I know you're talking about doing these auditions for network shows and that kind of thing, or you're being called into the same casting offices. Um, could you talk a little bit about, that process of really getting like good representation and feeling, I don't want to be too like mumbo jumbo about it, but like feeling worthy enough to call in those kinds of auditions and like and those opportunities. I feel like I've struggled with that, and the thing that I hear the most from people when I'm like, what would help your acting career? They're like, I just need an agent. Um
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
just I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, whether it's mindset or technical, like send this many emails out, like whatever you've got
Yeah.
for agents and like next level auditions.
Yeah. I I definitely struggle with that. I don't think there's ever been a part of my life where I'm just like, no, I'm I'm perfect and that's it. And I'm going to feel like that for the rest of my life. Like
Yeah.
I constantly still struggle with that. And I think what has helped me, and it's ever changing. The things that help me are ever changing too. One thing that's really helped me during COVID, especially, I started a career coaching, like group coaching,
Hmm.
um, program. It unfortunately ended, but if anyone is ever looking for like an amazing career coach, Brian Pataka,
Brian Pataka.
if you know him, or
I
if
haven't done
anyone
the
else,
career coaching. I did like a resume, like an Actors Access thing,
nice.
which I feel like you
He
can see anybody on Actors Access if they've got the specific, like the asterisk and the thing. Like I feel like you can
Yes,
tell who's taken Brian's courses.
yes,
It's
I'm
marvelous.
sure. And he offers a lot of different classes and
Yeah.
courses. I was part of his like group coaching uh, for a year and a half, until he ended that specific program. And he still does a lot of different other programs.
Yeah.
But there's so many amazing coaches out there. Amy McNabb is a wonderful, wonderful mindset coach for
Mm.
actors. She is incredible about getting into your mindset and really helping you understand why and how you are talking to yourself, and like kind of I don't want to say reprogramming, but basically
Yeah.
helping you with your mindset. Um, and so there are several different ways of going about that in those ways. I think I've also had to, like we've said, celebrate every little win
Mm.
and take those wins in. And I hate this saying. There has to be, maybe you know a better way. There has to be a better way of saying it, but like fake it till you make it. Like I
Mm,
don't love that saying, but
right.
like the idea behind it of just
It's kind of
not
like
faking it.
you have to embody who you already want to be in order to get there, is kind of how
Yeah.
I've seen a little bit of it done.
Yeah, and I think it's like I guess it's yes, that and having just like incredible positive self-talk. Like there'll be sometimes, and I find this with like working out, that it's so easy to like pick apart all the things that you don't like about whatever about yourself, you know?
Hmm.
If you flip that on the other side and you're like, okay, well, what's going right?
Yeah.
What are all the things I do like? What are the things I'm amazing at? What are the wins I've already accomplished so far? Are what's really working for me right now? And I think having that positive self-talk that have with that I've learned to have, I will say, with myself of being like, okay, I didn't get that, but I'm really proud of like the work that I did for that audition,
Hmm.
and getting to a place where it's not about necessarily finding booking the role or finding the best agent, or I mean you want to find like a great agent, don't get me wrong, or like uh, uh, making sure this one casting director like absolutely loves you. I think it's about finding the people who really love you, really click with you, and especially with um, representation.
Yeah.
I have gone through so many different, I'm sure you know, like so many different reps over the course of
Hmm.
years. And at the end of the day, I think it's like dating, you know, like you have to find one that you love and like gel with, and who, you know, you believe in, like vice versa. Like they want to
Hmm.
believe in you, they want to gel with you. Um, and kind of like taking power back in the sense of like going into a room, whether it's casting or reps, and being like, they want me, you know what I mean? And I've felt that way with like meetings with reps in the past, where I'm like, at the end of the day, like they would be working for me. So, like, in reality, I'm kind of interviewing them. Like, do
And it's
I want,
such a bizarre dance where, because you're reaching out to them, and I feel like actors, self included, can come from this really desperate place of like, I need an agent, and you're the gatekeeper, and I can't get like
Mhm.
access those other auditions without good representation. So how do you approach it in a way that's like a, no, this is who I am, and are you a right fit for me kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that's always something that I shouldn't say always, in the last couple of years have really embraced. It's kind of, it can be the same with, you know, job interviews too.
Hmm.
You're going in, you probably, you know, like maybe really want the job or anything, but you're also interviewing them. Like, what's the work culture like? What's the company environment like? Um, you know, especially with reps, like how do they handle the communication with you now to like set up a meeting?
Yeah.
How, what are they like as a person to like talk to? These are the people who are going to be like advocating for you. Do they have a great attitude? Are they kind of a dick? Like, no offense, like if you're acting like a dick towards me, like are you acting like a dick towards like
Mm,
casting directors?
good
You
one.
know, like I want to work, you know, you don't have to be like the my favorite person on earth, but I'm also like going in there interviewing you because if you're going to be on my team, I want somebody who I really, really believe in, really like. And I know it's the other way around. Like they, you know, they want to believe in you
Yeah.
too, but it's a two-way street for sure.
Was there anything that you're doing, like your current reps, were did you get them from emailing, or was it like referral based, or how did that work? And before you've got the meeting and can kind of do the interviewing of them, pitch yourself in a way that's like, hey, you should see me.
My current reps right now, I have all been either referral based or I've known them, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
But in the past, I have always done like cold outreach or also been referrals. To have. So I've done it all. I've done the cold outreach. I've done the getting to know people. I've done the referrals. And I do feel like my team right now, I'm very happy with and as a whole. And I think it's taken me like a full 10 years to actually feel that way. It's not that I haven't loved any other reps in the past or they haven't done great things for me. I think as a whole, with like everyone together, I've really been like happy with who I have, which is again like something you might not think about to be like, hey, but like I am very, very grateful, and it's taken years to get to that place.
Yeah.
But my current manager was actually somebody I interned for 10 years ago when I worked out here or when I moved out here. And she was a commercial agent at the time. And in the last couple of years, she's become a manager. And I interned for her for a year, which was such a good experience knowing what is going on that side of things in an agent's world um, as an actor. And so we reconnected over COVID, and luckily, I wanted to work with her. She wanted to work with me. So like that was such a great, um, just a great happenstance. It was the right timing,
Yeah.
the everything. And then with my other reps, I've gotten referrals from friends. And for my commercial agent, my manager at the time got me that meeting. So, but I've gotten good reps from cold calls or, and I've done the whole workshop thing
Hmm.
too. I've gotten meetings from that, and it's never worked out, but it's still a great feeling to be able to be like, I'm putting myself out there, whether I get meetings, whether I get rep or not, I'm like doing like X, Y, and Z. And like everyone has a different thing. Like I know friends who like crush workshops and like get offers left and right. I know friends who do, pay for to do a program that people offer to like, zhuzh up your resumes and things like that to like send out. And like that really works. And then I know people who just like, find incredible rep because they like cold outreach.
Yeah.
Um, I don't, sorry, that was like such a long way. I feel like
No, it's
sometimes I
like,
can totally ramble.
no, I love it. We're actors.
Yeah,
We like to talk. No.
yeah. Yes. So I don't know if that answered the original question or not.
No, it
But
does. I think it's just one of those things where being open to possibilities of connection everywhere. And I like what you said about that you interned for this person 10 years ago, and that kind of brings me
mhm.
to networking and how I think a lot of people are like, ew, gross networking, but really it's just like making friendships along the way, and you keep working with people and kind of staying in touch. And I think social media makes that a little bit easier as well, to just kind of see what people are working on and pop in and be like, this looks cool. um,
Yeah.
but is there
Mhm.
anything I have a million different ways that I want to take that, because I want to ask about the networking piece. But while you were talking about um, working in the with the commercial office, I'm wondering if there's any insight from being on that side of it. And I'm sure things have changed in 10 years, and self tapes weren't a thing before, but anything that you could give about, hey, actors, don't freak out because this is what it's like on this side.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm sure things have changed in 10 years. So I'll just comment on what like I learned 10 years ago,
Sure.
which was the fact that your agents are like submitting you every day, especially commercially. Theatrically, it might be different. Um, but even, and you can get a submission report to always like
Yeah.
see, but even if they're not submitting you for like a role on like every single day, they see your pictures every day. Like, I was with this talent agency for a year, just interning a couple days a week. And I felt like I knew every single one of their clients so well because by the end of it, I was also submitting for, like smaller projects, smaller commercials, things like that, new
Hmm.
media things. I felt like I knew them so well because I would see multiple different pictures of their faces every single day.
Wow.
So like everyone in the office like knows who you are.
Even
And
if you've got like, were there like 100 clients, or like what were the numbers that you were kind of working with?
yeah, and yeah, so like on the commercial side of things, it's like many
Yeah.
hundreds,
Yeah.
probably 300. Um, but yeah, you see who you see everyone. So like if you can bring up exactly who's going to like fit the role and you can just like, go through everything. So like you're crossing by people's eyeballs like multiple times a
Yeah.
day. Um, so because I know, and I'll get like this too, but like I know actors are like, my agent never submits me, my agent never, I never get any like roles and yada yada. But I'm like, they see your face every day. They're reminded of you every day. Um, and like kind of like on that end of things, like they're also reminded, like the agent I was interning for would reach out to actors and be like, hey, it's been like 3 years since you've gotten new headshots. We're submitting you, but we're not getting auditions. Like, I think it might be time to get some. And I've definitely done this in the past where I'm just like, okay. And and headshots are such a different thing. It's such a
Yeah.
different beast. It's like so much money. It's, planning it out. It's like taking the time. It's like really, it takes time to
Mhm.
do it. But a year goes by and then you're like, okay, that they haven't really like gotten new shots, and I'm still looking at their same old shots like day after day. Um, and it's totally different if you're like, reaching out and saying like, hey, I hear you. It's not in the cards for me financially for like the next like 6 months to like maybe a year. Like I'm just updating you on like my thing, and having good communication with your agent had always been like, oh yeah, of course, like totally understandable. No one's gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna rep you if you don't have like $1,000, like or
Yeah.
hundreds of dollars to shell out on headshots. So it was things like that where it's like if people weren't communicative about like where they are and things like that for things like that, or um, then it was more noticeable than the people who are being communicative. And again, I am not the perfect person about like always staying in contact or like always
Yeah.
communicating things like that, because there's so much going on in life, of course.
Sure. But I'd love to
But
hear, since you said,
mm,
because I've always heard, like you want to reach out every month or whatever the interval is so that you stay
mm,
top of mind. And here you are saying they're seeing you every day. Like they know exactly who you are.
mhm.
So I'm curious, how much do you find, like, how much would you suggest reaching out to an agent and keeping in touch, and not in a way that's like, why am I not getting auditions? Like, no one likes that. But in a way
Right.
that's like, hey, hope you're doing well. Like, what do
Yeah.
you say maybe, and how often are you checking in?
I feel like everyone, again, will have a completely different opinion about this. I think once a month is nice. And again, I don't always follow that. There could be 2 or 3 months that go by and I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to my agents. And like, maybe I'll just reach out and be like, hey, like, here are some updates on my end. And it's never, maybe once a year, maybe I'll have a conversation of like, hey, like, like, what do you think I could be doing to like help you?
Yeah.
Um, and like let's like if they're open to jumping on a call, like let's do that. But if every couple weeks, every month, every 2 months, you're I think it's always beneficial to be like, hey, like here are some updates, even if you don't have any auditions coming in, just be like, I'm taking this class, or like I'm working on these projects, or even if you're not in class, just to be like, here's some work that I've been working on, whether it's like your own work or just like I am working on scenes by myself, I'm putting myself on tape. Um, or you went to a film festival and you met a couple people,
Yeah.
you took a workshop with a casting director. I mean, you could even, one of my reps was like, you should start following casting directors and like commenting on their posts online. And again, I'm sure everyone has their own opinion about that. But, even if you're like, I'm this month or for the next like quarter, I'm focusing on building relationships with people. And with that, I'm not going to be like, hey, like I need to build a relationship with you. It's kind of what you touched on, what like we've said in the past, where it's just like I want to gently remind people that like I exist and like
Yeah.
sometimes send out a newsletter, like just to be like, hey, like it's easy to do that when you've booked something, but also to be like, like I worked on this voiceover thing, or like I'm really proud of this audition that I did that's like already aired, so you can like share it.
You're sending
Um,
that to casting directors?
uh, I know people who have done that, who will send out newsletters to agents, casting directors, friends in the industry, where they're like, oh, like this show, I love this show, it was so great. It reminds me of the time that I auditioned for the pilot 1 year ago
Yeah.
before it even came out. And if they share it, I've always been told that like if you're going to share anything, like make sure it's something you that is good, that like really shows you off. So
Mm.
like if it's an audition that like you freaking nailed out of the park, I don't think it's in the show and the project has already aired. I think it's great to like probably share with people who you're like, I'm really proud of this and it's really good. People do that on Instagram. I see that like all the time. Where they'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, like this aired a year ago and like I auditioned for it and like I'm really proud of it. But I do think there's a difference between like sharing things just to share them and sharing things because it shows you off really well, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's so important to be intentional like that, but also I to play devil's advocate for the people
Mm,
listening that are like, "Well, Julia, I don't have something extraordinary about my career to share every month. What do
yes,
I do?"
yes, yes. Yeah.
Like, that's
I
why I'm sharing stupid things on social media because I don't have anything,
oh,
Julia.
and I'd be like, girl, believe me, I got you. I feel you. Like um, I run into this a lot. And so I, you know, there's so many different things. And I shouldn't say I hate, that's such a strong word. There's a good part of me personally who, and perhaps this is me beating myself for not sharing as much as I should. But when I see some people who just share only actor things like all the time,
Mm,
then I'm like, okay, but like, do they? And like, there's no judgment. There's no judgment there. But I'm always like, okay, but like, what else? Like, what are you like, like
yeah,
do you have a life outside of that? And like if your life is that, like great. And if you only share actor things, then like great, like that's awesome. Personally, it's just like not my jam. Like I love to share things that aren't part of my actor
actor
life
life, yeah.
because I also like go through seasons where I'm just like I don't have a lot of things to share. I might like be in class or I might be taking a break. I've taken a break for the last like several months and it's been great. And
Yeah.
like that is okay too. So, you know, I don't know if that's something like anyone is like jumping to share with casting directors like necessarily like all the time, like every month, and like there's no right way to keep in contact with somebody. There might be like an annoying way or a less annoying way,
Yeah.
but I think when you don't have anything to share, then like that is also okay because you're like living your life, you're doing other things.
Right. And I feel like as long as it's if you don't focus so much on the every month and you're just like,
Yeah,
let
yes,
me make sure that what I'm sharing, and especially if I'm reaching out to casting directors or something, that it's coming from a genuine place. And again, doesn't go back to like that desperate place of like,
yes, yes.
please,
It's like
I'm doing things right. Hey, here I am. Haha.
right, you're right, and like sharing things just to
But it's like, hey, I'm
yeah,
excited about this. And
yes. I think that's such a good the word genuine. Doing anything in a genuine way, you're never going to come across as like desperate. If you're like, "Man, I'm really excited about sharing this." Like
yeah.
I'm like like especially you with like your short film, like I want to know about that. Like I want to know where it's going. I want to like see where like what's
Yeah.
happening with it, you know what I mean? And I like, even saying the one a month thing, I do not follow that all the time. whatsoever. I think that's like a benchmark for like personally what I would want.
Yeah.
And I always get so in my head when people are like, you should quote unquote be doing like X, Y, and Z. Like there's no path that
Yeah.
every person that is going to be right for every person, because everyone is different, and this town is just like built on relationships, and so many relationships look so many different ways. And so it whatever works for you,
Yeah.
follow
Well,
that.
speaking of building relationships, is there anything that you're doing or would recommend doing where you're like, hey, I'm trying to meet this many people, or a very intentional, I want to meet this casting director, therefore I'm reaching out in this way, or trying to ask, someone else who's worked with them? Like, are there groups or, cold calling, anything that you're doing or setting goals for yourself in that way to build those relationships? Or is it all much more organic, like, hey, I met this person at a party, or we met on set, or all of the above?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's something I'm always curious about with other people in this industry, because I was always somebody who did not love the idea of networking whatsoever.
Yeah.
I consider myself an extrovert and I love meeting new people and making friends and things like that. But when I'm put in an environment where like the sole purpose is to network, I shut down so much, because everyone, like, there are just people who are just like there to be like, hello, what's your name? And like just trying to meet everyone. And the energy just like totally throws me off. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I even get that way sometimes in workshops, to be honest, in environments where, there are people who are there solely to, I don't know, it's the energy of like there to meet a casting director and only meet that casting director to get something from them.
Sure.
And I just like don't react well to
It's
like,
very transactional.
yes, it's very transactional. And like going back to the genuineness of it, I think uh, I'm a little bit I'm better in those environments now, because I'm like, you know what? Everyone's just doing their best, and everyone's just doing their best in this crazy industry in this crazy town. And if I can just bring my genuine self to like any of those types of situations, whether it's like a quote unquote networking event or a workshop or a film festival, then like I have enough confidence in myself just to like be myself.
Yeah.
And if I get to meet anyone else cool, like that's great. I definitely, how do I phrase this? I usually have ideals in my head of like what I want to be doing, like sending out an email just to check in with reps once a month,
Hmm.
or sending out even a newsletter sometimes when I do like have something to share. Or, I've been told before in the past that, like, why not cold outreach to a casting director to introduce yourself? Like, those are all things that I'm like, yes, I want to be doing those. Do I always follow through every time that that idea comes into my head? No. And I give myself grace when that happens, because I am only a person with so many hours in the day, with so many other things happening in my life. I try to do those things at least every once in a while. And especially when I'm going to an event now, like a film festival,
Hmm.
or I'm going to set, or I am at a panel or like a Q&A or something like that, I give myself grace to be like, okay, if you don't meet like five or even one person in this industry tonight that like you feel like could help you or anything, like that is okay. You don't need to go to every event thinking that you have to meet somebody.
Yeah.
The way the world works is, I feel like even outside of this industry, you'll meet people, and in like a couple months or even a couple years, you'll be like, "Oh, I've seen you. I remember meeting you at this thing, or you were at that thing. That's crazy. I was also there, and we like didn't meet." Like that's just like
Yeah.
how it is normally.
Or I want to put everyone at ease that like I meet people all the time and think, "Oh my gosh, I would love to work with them." But I don't have
Hmm.
anything for them right now. Like it's the exact same as the
Yeah.
casting directors or directors that you're going to meet. If I like you, I know what Julia's about and I like your energy. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, as soon as I have this funny role, right? Like this, and this,
Yes.
I'm going to call up Julia because she'd be perfect. But I can't do
Yeah.
that if I don't have the opportunity for you, so it might take
Yeah.
a few years or something, but I'll come back.
Yeah. 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 And it's all about like, I think building those genuine relationships. And that's how it is. Like they're not gonna they somebody might not have something for you like tomorrow, but it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I met this person. I really like them. I love working with them. And let me just say that Kaitlin is amazing to work with. So if you ever had anything in the future, Kaitlin, I'll
Stop it.
gladly again work with you because it's just a lovely, lovely experience.
Thank you.
But that and I think that's it. You know, like I don't find that I'm like incredible at networking because I just want to do it in a very like genuine way. And other people who are good, I don't mean that they're not doing it genuinely. I
But it might be more of a
am
numbers
just
game.
yeah, 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 exactly. But that's how it is. I find that like, you know, even going to like Pickett sometimes, I'll go and be like, why does everyone look so familiar? Like obviously there are actors, there are writers, there are
Yeah, yeah,
producers, like
yeah.
there are people who look familiar because I've probably seen them on TV or in films, but I'm like, I feel like I've met these so many of these people before in the past. I'm like, it's probably because I have. Like it's probably because we all have met each other in some sort of capacity. And that's just like, you know, how it's gonna be. I don't know if I
Yeah.
really gave any like concrete advice in that
This is the
in
thing. That's the
that.
conversation. We're letting it wash
Yeah,
over people. People can take away from it what they want. I'm
yeah,
loving this. You just brought
true.
up the picket lines. I did want to ask you
Mhm.
about, the joint strikes happening right now, and you've been out
Yeah.
to the pickets a couple of times. What has that
Mhm.
experience been like, and what are you hearing from people, and what are you thinking about the strike?
Yeah, it's actually been a really lovely, wonderful experience each time. I think because there's such a sense of community out there. Um, we're all on the same page, fighting for the same things. And we're all on the same level of it. Like whether you're in one of the guilds or not, like if you are fighting for the same thing, then like, all right, we're all on the same team. And it's a wonderful, wonderful way to feel with your peers.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think at various times, uh, people are definitely talking about it like on the picket lines. I think everyone, for the most part, I don't want to talk for everyone, but I think there is a very optimistic energy and a hopeful energy because at this point, it sucks to that so many people are out of work. No one
Yeah.
wants to be doing this and for people to lose their jobs or for people to be out of work. No one feels good about that. Um, at the same time, there's a hope that if we are able to get these things, and I personally do think that we will be able to at least find things that we are going to be like very happy with, then it's going to be beneficial for everyone moving forward for people to be able to ask for these things. You know, at a point, you just want things, you want these studios, these people to understand that while we're making TV and film that amass so much money, these the people working
Are
for that,
seeing very little of it.
yes, yes. And the fact that people are standing up to be like, you know what, we see the amount of money that you are getting and the fact that we're not getting a cut, not just for actors, for writers, but like IATSE, makeup, you know, all these people, like everyone deserves better than what you are telling us that what we deserve. Because what you're telling us we deserve is like like the tiniest little sliver
Yeah.
for you to make money.
Can you
And
give
you're making money off
can you
us.
give some people like some numbers to work with, because I see so many comments where people are like, boohoo actors, go get a real job, or like the only actors they know are making tens of millions of dollars on a film. So there's no real concept of like making less than $150 a day kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
So could you
And I
speak to like what are the people in the trenches really like maybe making?
Yeah, I know I've read so many of those comments, and like I get it because no one knows. No, they just don't know. They just don't
Yeah,
know like the realist the any of it. And it varies for different parts, for different roles. You know, I'm trying to remember what like the actual, because I don't want to butcher any of like these
sure. Let's
numbers or
just
anything.
do estimates.
Yeah,
I feel like 160 something is like a day rate for an extra maybe.
yeah,
Something like
yes,
that. So
something like
would
that.
principal be like 900-ish? Like something in that ballpark?
Yeah, I think it definitely varies. So like yeah, from extra like 150, 160, something like that a day. Somebody fact check, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, guys, these are going to be, I feel like my numbers are one, out of date, and two,
Yeah,
I'm just trying to be like, are we making 1,000 a
realistic.
day or 10,000
Yeah,
a day? Like,
I feel like it can vary. Yes, like if you're on, whether you're like a co-star, a guest star, reoccurring. If you're doing an episode for like a week, you can make anywhere from like 1,000 to several $1,000s. Um, But to put it into perspective, if that show is on like network cable and it reruns, like the not only the studios are getting money, are making money off that, but you are also receiving a piece of the pie because residuals
residuals.
exist in that world. When it's on a streaming service, the studios are making all this money off of you, essentially, and you are not receiving any piece of it.
Yeah.
So while the studios are making like billions of dollars, still using your work, you are not like getting any of that unless
Yeah.
somebody like purchases an episode off like iTunes. But like,
Right, right,
that's
right, right, right.
not going to be like as great as if it's on like a network cable
Yeah,
broadcast.
like putting that into perspective for people, it's like Julia said, someone at like our level might work a week or two throughout the
Mhm.
entire year when it comes to acting. So it's not
Yes,
like you're not talking about people without um day jobs or other forms of income, because I really hate like the comments I've been seeing that are like, well, just you don't
totally.
have a real job. These are the
Yeah.
same people
It's a
that like,
side hustle. Yeah.
well, it's like all the same people that turned to TV and movies during a pandemic when we had nothing else to do. It's like, don't tell me that you don't look at actors every single day of your life. Like,
Right.
it's so interesting, the disconnect there for me. But
Right. I know.
like,
And yeah, sorry.
no, I was just kind of trying to summarize of like, you know, first there's going to be the day rate that you make, and then people might not are not working 9 to 5 throughout the entire year. So you're not making that. If you hear that day rate and you go, well, that sounds pretty good still, you're not making that every single
The full
day
year.
of the
No,
year.
no.
And then what you just said about reruns and residuals and how that used to be a huge uh, way that people could make money
Hmm.
throughout the year and beyond that time, um, are now the numbers with streaming people, the companies are not being transparent about what those numbers are, and there's no back end, so to speak,
Yeah.
for the actors as well as like indie filmmakers. I've heard this being a huge problem where like you just get the money for being
Hmm.
put on a streaming platform,
Right.
and then that's it.
That's it.
And then you
And I
might go
think
viral and it doesn't matter. Like,
yeah. And I think that's like a major part that the people who are like, okay, but like, yeah, acting is a side hustle. Like, you should, like, you can't be expecting to make like so much money if you're not working a lot. And to that, I say, like, sure, we're not asking for like $1 million if like somebody like not like a series regular is like doing one episode of TV. We're asking for like a fair share of what like the studios are making off of us.
I think the thing being what you said of it takes a lot of people to create a show or a
Hmm.
film, and some people get paid only once and some people continue to make money because
A lot of money off of
yeah,
it.
because a whole like if you make a film, it's its own LLC, and
Hmm.
that's how everybody's paid. So some people continue to make money as the film makes money, and then what we're seeing is as some people don't. So it's kind
Yeah.
of just like a everyone should benefit. Well, it's like it de-incentivizes you to promote your project or something because if there's no incentive structure for if the project does well that you continue to see the results of that. It's just
Yeah.
like a and then we're just making crap. I don't know. I'm also going off a thing that doesn't really make sense and I
Yeah.
want to put a pin in that. I want to change
Yeah. Yeah.
to the AI argument because this is the
Yeah.
one that really for me just hammers home like a we cannot continue down this path without putting
Hmm.
some contractual protections in place um,
Hmm.
because I know some people are very much on the some celebrities have already spoken out like, yeah, I get to live forever and do movies forever. And I'm very
Sure.
much on the side of like, I can't imagine you're using my face and voice without my consent to put
Right.
into reality stories that I didn't contribute to. Like, it's such a bizarre phenomenon to me that anyone would be okay with this. But
Yes.
tell me your thoughts on that. Is AI freaking you out? How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's definitely freaking me out. I think though, I definitely am trying to embrace it. So many people have made the correlation of like this AI coming into our lives not the same way like the internet did. And so many people were like, "What is this internet? I don't trust it." Like yada yada, whatever. And like I get it. I think because it's not, there aren't many regulations around it, and it affects everyone, like not just people in our industry. Like
Oh, yeah,
AI can take a lot of jobs. And I know people are saying, like, yeah, but like that's what technology does. It
sure.
makes things easier and then it creates other jobs and different jobs. Like, yes, I'm definitely not saying like stop technology. Like, I think it'd be naive to think that it's not going to be a part of our lives in the future, in the near future. Like, it is already a part of it. And in a
Yeah.
year from now, I'm sure it'll be like, wow, yeah, how did we ever do that without like AI, but I do think in terms of like using an actor's or anyone's like even writers like their IP or their likeness or anything like that, and being able to pay them once for it and make money off of it in the future with doing a bazillion different things with it, then I think that gets crazy, like you can't, like there has to be some regulations in place to not only protect us but also so that these corporations cannot like become monopolies of like their own doing, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um I feel so similarly because I don't want to be like AI terrible because I do think there are a lot of cool and exciting things coming out in the
Yeah.
AI space and like you said it's this new technology that we can use to our advantage and the the thing that I just struggle with is the not being taken advantage of while
Mm,
we're going to be seeing a lot more of this happening particularly just from the acting standpoint of again it's your face and
yeah.
we're all at this point because I know actors are getting like the full body scans but just
Mhm.
anyone online you've got your social media out there our faces are all out there and they're
Yeah.
all being used to train these technologies and like there's
Yeah.
just something about that that does not sit right with me.
Yeah. Did you see, and like, who knows if this was like a hoax? Probably not though, because it's like real. But this thing on social media about how this person, somebody was using an influencer's face and like used AI to put it on a bunch of like naked bodies and was starting to post these photos everywhere. And this influencer, like I didn't see, I saw like, an article about it. So I'm just like, didn't do my research, but I didn't want to because I'm like, I don't want to look into that.
Yeah.
But basically, this influencer was so upset because they're like, these are not my pictures. Somebody has used my face, put them on here. And it's really upsetting because obviously, like, whoever's doing it, like, please stop. Like, I can't stop these people. But like, if there just needs to be like regulations or something in place to like protect people because, and it's so crazy about like the, what is it, like the deep fakes?
The deep
Like,
fakes, people, I could take your face from your social
yes,
media and put you in a porno, and that's
yeah.
like absurd.
And like the technology isn't, incredible now, but like in the next few
That's what I'm
years, and
saying.
like
This stuff
it's,
is all new, but like just wait 2 years. You're going to be like,
yes,
we won't know what's real or fake on the internet, I don't think.
it's so great, and it's so terrifying with the way that like news spreads, and like everyone's saying like that it'll spread misinformation about
Sure.
things, and it makes me nervous about anything because then it's like, okay, well, like, how do we know
Yeah.
what is real and like what isn't? Like,
Right.
I would like to think I would know, but like,
But
I don't
already,
know.
I say this just even us looking at social media now where filters have gotten so good
Oh my
that
gosh, yeah.
it becomes really difficult to know if that's even someone's face or like people can snatch
Yeah.
their waist on a video now. Like it's
Yeah.
so crazy. So
Mm.
this stuff is really prevalent, and I know it's just going to keep happening. But I want to bring it back to acting and the strike, because obviously we're striking right now to get these protections put into place in contracts. But I'm curious, um, because you've booked things with networks, how much flexibility is there where you and or your reps could come in and say, hey, this contract actually needs to say X, Y, and Z. Like, this is the basic one for SAG, but we need to actually have this added.
Mm. That's a good question. I personally have never had to deal with that
Yeah.
yet. Where I've seen a contract and been like, no, actually, like, I really need this. But I do know other people who have. In uh, the case of, I have known people who might have booked an episode of something and it's a really intense episode, and they might need like a special either trailer or area on set where like they can go to and just like be by
Mm.
themselves so they can like be in the zone. Like if you have to be like crying for like, or just like,
Yeah.
it's like a really intense like abuse scene or something, like that might be something that an agent's able to be like, can we put something in the contract or have an agreement that like this actor is able to be on set in between rehearsals with like a designated just like space where they can go and like, just make sure they're in the zone the entire time. um in regards to like other thing, I think it definitely depends on like the role
Sure.
and the production.
Yeah.
And because I know my reps have fought for more money in the past and like for a role, and like sometimes like it's worked out and sometimes they're like, no, like we absolutely don't have any more money, that it's
I
the
think
same for
that's the
everyone.
fear, is like if you try to ask for more, whether it's money
Mhm.
or protections or whatever that you want the contract to say, that there would be pushback and you'd just be fired. Like they could just find someone else. So that's always the fear.
Totally. I think that it's a normal, at least with money wise, it's like very normal for reps to just like ask. And I think it would be different if they're like really pushing and they're like, we won't. Cause I've heard that too on like at the top side of things where, there might be an actor who's great for the part and they're testing for a show and they just won't, their reps are fighting for like more money, and whether it's the actor or the reps that like really want
Yeah.
the actual money. I heard a case recently where that happened, and casting was like, we literally cannot give you more money, and the actor, or his team I should say, was like ready to walk away, and they're like, I'm sorry, like,
Yeah.
like we don't have the extra, we don't magically have like extra money. So like I think it's a case by case basis, like for sure, depending on the role and the actual production.
Sure.
Um, but it's usually, I feel like, pretty common for agents to out of the gate ask like, okay, like we see through, like, is there any chance we can get like a little bit more,
Yeah.
things like
I
that.
just I bring it up because I kind of want to champion people to, even if it's like an indie project,
Mm-hmm.
if you're just making stuff with your friends, to really read your contracts, because I almost signed something that was worded in a way that made it sound like they would have license to my likeness indefinitely. And
Oh
that's
wow.
really going to be stuff that, whether it's malicious or a mistake, you need to look at that kind of stuff and make sure your contracts are okay, because we don't know what kind of technology will come out. And you might want to have a clause in there that says, no, you can only use this for publicity for this project and during this time, like, whatever. I just want
Yeah.
to tell people that yes, we're striking for these certain parameters, but I do hope that people will take looking at their contracts seriously, is basically.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up an incredible point, because that is something that is so easy to just be like, oh, here's the contract, like I'm going to sign. But like you really do want to like sit down and look at it. And that's something that I will say, and for anyone who might be, thinking of doing this or anything for with interning or whatever, that was one of the things that I took away from interning at this talent agency, was that like I got very familiar with contracts overall, and just by like talking to agents and putting them together and like being in the room when the agent is signing them with like the re-upping contracts with clients, it
Mm.
was so invaluable to just like know exactly like, oh okay, like this is what an out clause means, or like the terms of what it really means in the terms of like a contract and things like that, and like what in perpetuity like means when you book something, and like
Mm.
why like you probably don't want anyone to own your likeness forever.
Right.
But it's good, it's really good that like you actually sat and like read everything, because at the end of the day like your agent could also like read stuff, but like you also want to be knowing exactly what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So I think that's so good that you are doing that.
I mean, yeah, I just, especially when it comes to, like I said, the smaller projects,
Mhm.
because I love working in the indie film world now that I'm, getting on the filmmaking side of it too. And it's just a like, everybody's kind of got their own little contract, and you're like, oh, well, maybe let's take a closer look at this,
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure it's all
yeah.
good. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I think and you need to kind of. And I always feel like if you don't know, you as in anyone, if anyone doesn't know exactly what it says, I've had to do this where like luckily I have a friend who's a lawyer, and
mm,
have been able to like send things
yeah,
to her and be like, is this what I think it means?
right,
And you can always Google things too. Like, if you don't know anyone who's like a lawyer, but like you could all Google exactly what things mean,
sure,
or like ask exactly what it entails too.
sure.
Mhm.
Um, I want to ask you so many more things, but just for time's sake, I
Yeah,
think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Um,
that's
I want to ask one more question, but before I do that, if you want to share, where can people find you, your social media, your website, where can people check you out?
yeah, sure. My Instagram is Julia G, just that for my handle. So just type that in. I think I'm wearing like a red sweater in my thing. Because you like sometimes I'll be like, oh, it's like Julia G, and like a million like
Yeah,
Julia G somethings like come up, and I'm like, okay, I'll just find Julia Gallagher like somewhere. And my website is julia-gallagher.com. That's one of the things I've been wanting to do actually during this downtime, is like revamp it a bit. So I like need to get like new pictures, like some of the pictures, not headshots, but like the other pictures that are
yeah,
up there are like a little old. So I'm like, okay, I can use this downtime to do that. But that's where you can find me.
I love
Trying to
that.
think of
And I was gonna say I love your website, so it's
Thanks.
so
Thanks.
fun. And do you feel that having an actor's website is helpful, like a good place to point people, because it's just gonna have everything right there?
I do. I like having one just because of that. I mean, I know a lot of people who use their Actors Access.
Yeah.
I kind of like it because then this gives me like a little bit of literal like space to be like, what have I done? Like little news or like successes
Mm-hmm.
recently that people can just like immediately see.
Yeah.
And then see like other pictures, and like my resume is up there. I mean, it's not extensive by any means. It's like pretty simple, but I like it because it adds that extra element, and like you can kind of see somebody's personality through it
Sure.
too.
Yeah,
But you
exactly.
don't need one. Like I'm not saying like everyone should have one. Like
Yeah, yeah,
have
yeah.
one.
That's
ones.
just another one of those where you hear different things from different people, because I know some people will use, like you said, Actors Access or IMDb. You can put your reel up there too. So it's like, huh, interesting. I like the
Yeah.
website too.
Yeah. I like having one, but thank
Yeah,
you.
and I love it. So, anyways, my last question for you. This is the Hungry Artist podcast. I want to ask all of my guests, what is your recipe for success?
I love that question, mainly because it's like hungry artist recipe. And it's such a good question to end with. I think a couple different things, just like a normal recipe. I love it. I think be kind to everyone. It's such like an old, I mean, it's just a normal thing like you would assume, but like again, this industry is so small, and the people you meet along the way are always people doing so many different things like years from then. It's just like
Mhm.
don't be a dick. Be kind to people. I think surround yourself with a, a really positive support system, and not even support system, positive people in this industry. It can be hard to find that, and I know it. Making friends when you're an adult is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. Um, but I think you can and find that by being in class, doing workshops, like doing film festivals. Like that's literally how we met. Like it's finding like a lot of positive people to surround yourself by if you can.
Mhm.
And then also recognizing that everyone's recipe will be different. So like my recipe for like success for me, or what might work for me, is probably going to be different than anyone else's recipe. And it's okay if you send out an email once a month, or you don't send out an email once a month, you know what I mean? Like every doing the things that align with like what make you happy and work for you, and how you define success is going to be yours. And everyone's path is different. Everyone's recipe is different. Like it's going to be different for everybody. And I think when you embrace that, then it's like, okay, then we're all on our own path. We're all making the same thing, and we're all just putting our little touches on it,
Yeah.
just like any other recipe. And then it's all like it's all the same stuff. They all taste a little different. They all taste good in a different way because of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I think that would be it. I thought maybe I had something else, but I think that might be it.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was so great talking with you.
Thank you, Kaitlin. I love you so much. I love working with you. I'm so glad you're doing this
Oh,
podcast. So thank you so much. I'm honored that you asked me to be on it.
yes. And we can't wait to see you up on the big screen.
Yay. Well, same. So
Ah,
I'll see you there.
all right. Great. Sounds good.